Hey guys, back again with another video. This is going to be the actual review of the Bauer Hyperlite 2 set after using it. And I'll just say right off the bat that it's been very positive. I've had a really good experience using this gear. And you might be thinking, well, is it going to get you out of the bonds? Finally found something? Maybe. We'll revisit that towards the end of this video. I'll talk about the gear first, and then I'll kind of get into that at the end of the video. But let's just get into the review. I'm going to start with the blocker first of all. There's not a whole lot to say about the blocker that hasn't been said by me about Bauer blockers, and specifically the Hyperlite, even the first Hyperlite blocker in the past by me, and a lot of other people have sung the praises of the Bauer blockers. But I'll put it to you this way: if you like the Hyperlite 1 blocker, it's more of the same pretty much with this. If you've never used the Bauer blocker, I strongly suggest it if you're open to it. Even try, incorporating it into maybe a different set that's not Bauer. Like with my last Vaughn set, the V9s, I had a Bauer Hyperlite 1 blocker with that set that I got to match pretty well with the rest of the set. But yeah, so it was just a lot more of the same with this. I love the streamline thinness of it. It's very comfortable on my hand. Good pop off the board of it. Love the stiff sidewall, the one-piece stiff sidewall. Again, though, all things that the first Hyperlite blocker had. In one aspect, I will say there's a mini step back with this blocker from the first one. And I kind of touched on this in the out of the box video that I thought it might be an issue. I wouldn't say it was an issue, but it's something that I think the Hyperlite 1 was better at than this, and that is the cuff. So you see how the cuff is. It's not very wide or pushed out as much as some other blockers, as much as the Hyperlite 1 was. So the flexion on it, it's not that it inhibits the flexion so much. It's more, especially at this point after I've been using it, it's more just that you kind of feel it kind of pushing against your wrist, so it's a little less of a comfortable feeling than on other blockers with different cuffs. It was worse the very first time I used it. Over time, using it a little more, the elastic has kind of stretched out a little bit. I'll be honest, I've also just kind of, in an attempt to break it in, if you want to call it that, I've sat here and just kind of pulled on it a little to try to stretch the elastic out. Again, something I mentioned in the out of the box video is that, yeah, you could probably just cut this and totally eliminate this from being an issue at all. I'm just very wary about doing that. I mean, it might be stupid. I mean, I know it's just elastic and it's not really going to compromise anything serious about the blocker, but I just have this thing. I just can't bring myself to cut the elastic on these things. And like I said, though, it's kind of stretched out. It's not really an issue, but it's just, if I had the choice, I actually prefer the cuff on the Hyperlite 1 blocker better than this one. But it's not a huge deal. All in all, I still think this is an excellent blocker. And, if you're not as ridiculous as me and you're willing to just cut the elastic, you could easily just do that and, make this looser. But it's just kind of a weird design decision by Bauer, sorry, not Vaughn, by Bauer to kind of change the cuff in this way and make it a little more uncomfortable or whatever. I don't know why they decided to do that, but yeah, so it's the only very minor negative thing I have to say about the blocker. But overall, it's great. Like I said, a lot of the same from the Hyperlite 1. And I mentioned about how they claim they moved the fingers down on this or up. I don't remember now. I said it in the out of the box video. It was up or down a couple centimeters, which at the time I was like, okay. And yeah, I didn't notice it at all. It's any paddle down play or holding the stick or anything, it felt the same as the Hyperlite 1 blocker. So I don't really know what moving the hand position really did. But yeah, so there's not really much more to say. Like I said, very much a lot of the same from the Hyperlite 1, which is not a bad thing at all. The Hyperlite 1 was my favorite blocker at the time. I guess you could say the Hyperlite one is still my favorite blocker just because it has the better cuff. But yeah, this is a great blocker too. No issues using it really, and highly recommend this, or even the Mock, or now coming out the Shadow blocker from their Supreme line. Both Bauer blockers, great blockers to use. So yeah, that's basically it. All I can think of about the blocker. So let's move on to the glove. In the out-of-the-box video, I was very impressed right out of the box with the glove, how easy it was to close, very comfortable, and yeah, didn't disappoint on the ice. It felt really good. You know, I pretty much like the Hyperlite 1 glove as well, but this feels even better. This feels like an improvement to me over the Hyperlite 1 glove, just as far as the ease of closure is even better. And like I said, just feels really comfortable on my hand right off the bat. Even from the first skate, it felt great. The only thing is, I will say, and this was the same thing with the Hyperlite 1 actually, like I don't catch great with it. And obviously it's not because I can't close it, because the closing is very easy, but I don't really know, it's not something I can really articulate that well why I don't catch that great with this, as opposed to say my Vaughn V10 XP blocker, which that thing is just a vacuum, just sucks up the puck. And that's just the way some gloves are. Like you can hear people talk about various gloves throughout the years, or they call it like that, like a vacuum, just sucks up the puck, like whatever. For whatever reason, my Vaughn for me is like that. And no other glove I've tried recently, like it's not even just the Bauer Hyperlite 2, but really no other glove I've tried recently besides that has that same effect. Now, I'll fully admit that part of it is that just I'm not that great at catching, meaning like getting the puck right in the pocket. Because yeah, if you get if you get the puck right in the pocket of just about any glove, you'll catch it. But you know, room for error. No, we're not perfect. I'm not a pro, kind of a thing. You know, I might not get it right in the pocket all the time, especially real quick close-in shots and whatnot. And it's that type of situation where the Vaughn glove for me really shines, that it's almost like no matter where the puck hits it, as long as it doesn't hit the cuff, but like anywhere in the palm or the pocket on my Vaughn glove, it pretty much stays in the glove. This one is a little more, you have to be a little more exact with it. We're really getting it in the pocket. Getting it to the kind of palm area is probably not going to work to catching it. So like I said, I do take like accountability that some of that is just on me being not the greatest catcher of pucks in the world. I'll say that, you know, I got a little better at catching the more I used it, as opposed to like the first one or two skates. But yeah, just whatever. In general, for me, the Vaughn glove, I catch a little better with. But in every other aspect, this glove feels really great. And, you know, I really have no problem using this glove in general as part of this set and whatnot. It's not like I'm here like regretting like, oh God, I got to use this glove just to match. Like, no, I'm fine using it. Like, yeah, I don't catch quite as good with it, but hey, I should be better, right? Yeah, so that's pretty much all I have to say about the glove. So let's move on to the leg pads. All right, so these leg pads are as comfortable, and the only other pad I found that's as comfortable for me as my Vaughns, how they feel on my leg. As you know, if you've been watching my past videos, especially with the Vaughns, I order them a certain way, custom. They're not stock V10s. I order them custom to feel a certain way, to work the certain way that I need from my game, how I play, whatever. And I've just never been able to find another pad that's exactly like that. I found some pads I've liked, like I like the Hyperlite ones. Optic 3 was another pad recently I tried that I liked pretty well. But they still were not quite there, okay? They were good in their own ways, but specifically for me and what I like, they weren't quite there for me as my Vaughns. These feel just as comfortable on my leg. Now, that's not to say they're exactly the same pad. This, while it is a flexible pad, and, you know, especially by today's standards, it's not as flexible as my Vaughn, specifically like up top here and just in the body of the pad. But just, I don't know, I guess because of how thin it is, how light it is, that stuff, it just felt really comfortable on my leg. I didn't feel it was inhibiting me at all. And yeah, it just felt really good wearing it. And then even in play, doing certain things, all felt great. Like this pad allowed me to play my style. I'll put it that way. I have a little bit of an unorthodox style. I'm kind of older, so I have a lot of the older style goaltending still in me that I do. Also, I have my own limitations, physical limitations, as far as my hips being crappy. So I do things a certain way that works for me that I kind of need to do that might not be, very technical. And that's a reason why a lot of pads just ultimately don't work out for me. But these allow me to do all the crazy crap I do on the ice at times, all the weird positions I get into, scrambling, battle plays. Like, this worked with me great with all that, because it's in those situations that I've found other pads sometimes don't quite work, or I feel inhibited by them. This pad allowed me to do and play how I wanted to, and that's what I really loved about it. The only thing kind of that happened, and it was right at the beginning, was I had to get used to the strapping. I had to kind of dial in the strapping. So it's all elastic strapping. I went over the strapping in the out of the box video, so go watch that if you want to see more about the specs and how it's built. But it's an all elastic setup going on with this. And the thing is, and I've kind of experienced this with other pads before that had that, it can be a little difficult to dial it in when it's just all elastic, because it's not like with the old style leather straps that have the little holes, and fifth hole from the top, I'll strap it there and it's going to feel that exact same way every time. With the elastic, it can be hard to find the exact way to strap it to make it feel the same way every time, to get it to a specific tightness you want it, because it's just the nature of the material. It stretches, right? So it did take me about 3 skates, I would say, to figure out the strapping for me to really work. And mainly it had to do with, it always felt good on my leg, but at first, I think it was just a little too loose. And I would get into certain situations where my knee would kind of fall off the knee stack, just because of how loose the pad was. It wasn't happening all the time. It was just certain specific situations. I was talking about the scramble kind of battle plays, where you're really contorting your body or the pads in certain ways. And so my knee kind of fell out of the knee stack a few times. So I had to really dial that in. At this point, I know exactly how I have to strap it, meaning I know the exact part of the Velcro, where it has to go on here. I have it memorized to know to get it to this pretty specific tightness I need for it to work for me. And once I got that, there was no issues at all with that. Like I said, it felt great. At this point, I would say the only real way that the Vaughn pad still works for me slightly better is because with Vaughn's customizing options, it allowed me to put a leather strap up top. Bauer doesn't offer that. And so that leather strap allows my Vaughns to get kind of pulled in a little bit at the top when I'm down in the butterfly. So I get a little better seal, specifically right at the 5-hole. With this, just because of the nature of the pad, and like I said, yes, it's marketed and it's supposed to be more of a flexible pad, but with nothing pulling it, nothing happening, it's still gonna react for the most part like a stiffer pad. So the top part doesn't quite get pulled in when I'm in the butterfly, and it leaves a little space there a lot of times. Now, the good thing with me though is because I'm still kind of an old school goalie. Back in the day, just because of the equipment we had and whatever, we had to squeeze our knees together on 5-hole shots. There was no thigh rise there to stop it or whatever. So I never lost that. So I still pretty much read all the shots coming in and see where they're going. I don't have a standard butterfly block kind of positioning I do that most goalies do these days. I really, I'll still do a half butterfly. Like I said, I'll squeeze my knees together, something going right in the 5-hole. I really have to see where the shot's going, and that dictates kind of how I do my butterfly. So I can't really off the top of my head remember like any 5-hole goals or anything that happened because like, oh, this wasn't bending in to cover the 5-hole. Like, it's like I said, if I read a 5-hole shot or whatever, I'll get my knees together. So that's not a huge issue for me, but it is something to say that in that one small aspect, the Vaughn pads do kind of work better for me just because of that option that they offer when going custom. That it's just not something I can do with the Bauer pads. But in my use of this and so far, it really isn't something that I noticed to be any kind of issue, or like I said, I can't recall a goal being scored on me where I was like, oh, it's because of that, you know? The boot, I talked about this in the out of the box video. Love the design of it. It's flat, it's thin, it's very flexible. You know, I can get a deep crouch in a deep stance with that boot. It's great as far as like post interaction, getting into like a RVH, getting out of an RVH, going post to post, all that, any kind of post integration kind of stuff. It's worked great for me. Yeah, and like the boot of a pad has come to be one of the most important parts of it for me. Like I can kind of tell just from the boot of a pad if I'm gonna in general like a pad. Like I know if a pad is like a stiff boot or even like a stiff and steep boot, I'm probably gonna hate it. If it's got a pretty flat or like flexible boot, I'm probably gonna at least be able to use it, even if maybe there's other parts of the pad I might not like. I could at least use it decently, you know? So the boot's very important to me, and I love the way this boot is and how it performs on the ice. As far as other things like rebounds, seal the pads, a lot of that is going to be the same. If you've been using Bauer for a while now, it's that stuff acts the same as any recent Bauer pads. It's basically the same performance as my Hyperlite ones. So one thing I've kind of noticed, and especially so more recently, I went back to using my V10s right before I filmed this video, just because I wanted to get a feel for them again, because I hadn't used them in a while. I had been using just the set. So I went back to the V10s just so I can kind of remember stuff about them and do a comparison. And something that I noticed is that in the past, I've always said like Bauer slides the best, and was always really impressed with Bauer's sliding. And I'm not about to tell you that these pads don't slide well or anything like that. They slid just fine. In fact, there was even times where I've overslid and whatnot. So it has more than enough sliding than I even need or whatever with these pads. So sliding is not an issue. However, I don't know if it's that maybe Bauer, for whatever reason, has come back down to earth a little bit with the sliding. Like, I hesitate to use the word worse. It's gotten like a hair worse at sliding. I don't know if it's that other pads, specifically as I'm comparing them to my Vaughns, have just gotten even that much better at sliding. Maybe a little bit of a combination of the two. But at this point, I no longer think this slides better than, well, at least my Vaughns. It slides better than some other pads I've tried, but I don't think it slides any better than my V10s. Let's put it that way. If anything, I might even give a slight edge to the V10s, that they slide even better than this. So for whatever that's worth to you, like I said, whether it's just that other companies have caught up to Bauer at this point, or something about this pad just doesn't quite slide as well as some past Bauer pads did. Because also I did notice that the material on the landing surface, I don't still have my Hyperlite ones to compare it to, but I feel like it was a different material than this is. Maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know. Again, I want to emphasize, it does not slide bad at all. I'm not complaining about the sliding. It just struck me after going back to using the V10s again, that's like, there's just not that crazy head and shoulders above everything else sliding Bauer used to have, like compared to my Vaughns. Like Vaughns slid great too. Like I said, just as good, if not even a hair better than these. So just, it's not a complaint. It's just something to say that, like, I don't know. I don't notice the that Bauer is just in its own realm in sliding anymore. I'm I'm more likely to say that it's because other companies at this point have caught up. I mean, let's face it, like unless you just keep innovating all the time, people are going to see what you're doing. They're going to catch up and whatever. And like specifically with Vaughn, that quick slide material they use is just great. It really is. It's been, people have known how good it is for a while now, ever since I think it was the V8 pad they first started using it on. So yeah, but in general, sliding was good with this. I had no issues with that. Just kind of wanted to throw that out there as something, a little anecdote I've noticed about it. Real quick, I'll talk about like the sizing with these. So I got a medium. I had a medium in the Hyperlite one. Medium is supposed to be a 34+1 in Bauer. I would say these fit maybe like a half size smaller than the Hyperlite ones. So depending on if you use the Hyperlite ones and you want to switch to the Hyperlite 2s, depending on where your knee landed on the Hyperlite ones, you might actually have to go a size up with these. And it's funny because most brands kind of going the other way with that, where people have to size down because they're just sitting on the skate higher. And while this does have a flat boot channel, or better to say no boot channel, so you would think that might make it sit up higher on the skate. But I'm going to say that it's just because of how thin and flat this boot is. I think overall, it actually just sits, like I said, maybe it's not a lot. It's not even a full size, but it sits slightly smaller. I do feel like these fit on my leg. I got maybe a half size smaller than the Hyperlite ones did. Now for me, I'm not complaining about that. I think these feel great on my legs. That little bit of a difference really doesn't make a difference for me. But it's just something I want you to be aware of. Sizing in the industry as a whole, it's kind of crazy these days, and it's very confusing for people. And a lot of people end up buying pads that are not quite the right size for them just because they're not aware of things. They're not able to try things on. So it's just something that I do want to put out there to be aware of. You know, as always, if possible, try on in a store if you can. If not, I understand you got to kind of wing it and take an educated guess. But just something, like I said, I wanted to point out that I do feel like there is a ever so slight sizing difference in these from the Hyperlite ones, of it fitting a little lower on the leg. What else should I talk about? But yeah, like I said, just felt really good on my legs. Movements felt really good. Yeah, and like the rebounds pop out just like past Bauer stuff. Yeah, all right, so I guess that's basically about it, is how these perform. So now I kind of want to talk about, all right, I compare everything for me to my Vaughns. I've been doing that for years now. So does this as a set beat out my Vaughn set? So I'm going to kind of be on the fence on this one. It definitely doesn't beat it out. Like, I'm not getting rid of my Vaughns and just keeping these. Although if for whatever reason I had to get rid of the Vaughns and only use these, I could, and it really wouldn't be an issue. I'd be fine using these. But for the foreseeable future, I'm keeping both. If you watched my out of the box video, I talked about how I got this gold Hyperlite 2 set to go with a specific team. Specific look I'm going for. That's something that's the V10s don't match with. So I do want to keep these. And like I said, the performance as a whole is right there with the V10s. How they feel for me, the comfort, right there with the V10s. I kind of mentioned about very minor things that I would give the V10s an edge in. But it's very minor. But if I have to say one or the other, I guess the V10s ultimately, by the narrowest of margins, still are edging this out for me. But like I said, it's so minute, and I really would have no issue using these Bauer Hyperlites and nothing else as my full-time set. But just the way things are now, and I I don't need to be getting rid of it. I can keep 2 sets right now, no issue. I'm going to be keeping 2 sets. I'll be using 2 sets. Like I said, I've even been using this Bauer set a lot more than the V10s, but part of that was to get used to having to do the review and also, just get used to the set in general. But I know like a lot of you guys who watch my videos watch it because you've come to find that you are a similar type of goalie to me. You maybe play like me if you've watched some of my footage and whatnot. You have similar likes as far as the gear goes. And so you want to see what I think about gear because if I like something, you would probably like it. So if you're one of these people and you're watching for that reason, I would say the Bauer Hyperlite 2 is a very good option for you. Especially if we're talking about going stock because yes, I got a custom set. And if you go back to my out of the box video, I go over all the custom options I did. But I would say 95% of it is a stock pad and very minor custom changes. And nothing I change really is going to affect anything I'm talking about as far as how they felt or performed for me. Mostly it's cosmetic stuff or just very minor stuff. So if you're a guy that is looking for the similar type of pads like I look for, and you can't go custom, because like I said, even with the Vaughn V10s, I only achieve what I like with those by going custom. The stock V10s I actually wouldn't even use for myself. So if you're somebody that needs to stick to a stock pad, you just can't do custom for whatever reason, then I would 100% recommend going with the Bauer Hyperlite 2s. Out of any stock pad, it is definitely the most comfortable and best for my purposes. And yeah, I was just super impressed with it because it's really like, in general, they took everything good that I liked with the Hyperlite ones and made them even a little better. Again, at least for me, I'm always talking about from my perspective. Now, if I want to talk about from just kind of a general perspective, I could see some people who like the super stiff pads, maybe thinking these are too flexible. In that case, you could straight up go with the Mach, or they're coming out, the newer version of the Mach now is going to be called the Shadow pad. You go with that. That's Bauer's stiffest pad. What I would recommend though, if you're able to do custom, is if you want to go with that as far as the thigh rise and body stiffness, but I would still recommend the going with the Hyperlite 2 boot. And if you do custom, you can kind of mix and match that. You can get basically a Mach or Shadow pad and get the Hyperlite 2 boot. Because I think that boot is really comfortable and would work well for just about anybody. I think it's a better boot. I mean, I've used a Mach pad. I have a video about that. And I just think overall, this is the superior boot to go with. So, if you do like a stiffer pad, you go that route, or like I said, just go straight up stock Mach or Shadow with this. Trying to think of maybe other reasons that somebody might not like these pads. Really, really hard to think of it, You can always go back to the old reason people hate on Bauer. There's that they still are kind of living down the bad reputation from years ago. I don't see the same quality concerns that they used to have. Yes, it's not made in America. That's an issue right there for some people, or made in the North America, Canada, US. It's made overseas. But I still think in general, the quality, the durability of it is good enough in comparison to other modern pads. The quality and durability in general has gone down in top to bottom in the industry. Nothing is as good as it was 20, 30 years ago. Okay. I'm sorry. Even the North American stuff isn't. That's because they design and make pads for performance much more than for being able to last longer. But I think the quality is at an acceptable level, especially for most people don't keep their gear that long these days. But hey, if that's something you're really concerned about, or you just can't get over the whole overseas made stuff, that's your choice to not buy pads or buy pads based on that, whatever. Trying to think really if there's anything else not to like. I mean, with the glove, I guess it comes down to the break angle. This is a 590, 60-degree break angle on the glove. So I guess if you don't like that, you might not like the glove. But in general, I think this is an absolutely phenomenal set. I think it would appeal to a very wide group of goalies. Like I said, really, unless the only ones I can see maybe not liking is just people that like a really straight stiff pad, which would, like I said, again, would be the mock. But other than that, if you, as long as you don't mind the shape and that this is somewhat more flexible, to me, it's still kind of a stiff pad, but that's my own sensibilities. As long as you don't mind that though, like it's an absolutely great leg pad. Like I said, glove and blocker. Blockers, I think, are bar none best in the business. Bauer blockers are. Glove, okay, maybe a lot of the glove is feel and break angle, so whatever. But like, other than like personal preference when it comes to that, I really just have little to no complaints about this whole set. It worked great for me. I'm going to keep using it. I'm going to keep this set for a while. And it's like 99% of the way there for me, like how I feel using my Vaughns. Very minimal difference. So yeah, I hope this video has been informative. I hope if you're someone looking for this style of pad, this, maybe helped you out, or maybe, hey, if you don't like the style of pad, it talked you out of getting it. But either way, always try to be informative, and I love helping you guys try to find the gear that's right for you. As always, if you want more information or whatever, don't hesitate to leave a comment. If you ever come across me on other social media, Facebook, Instagram, whatever, I'm always happy to talk gear with anybody. I've helped a lot of people with their questions and buying gear, so always happy to do that. But that's going to be the end of this video, and I'll see you in the next one.